Tsuyoshi Makoto unexpectedly gets teleported to a magical world from his regular pathetic office job. However, he doesn't have any strong powers that he can use to protect the kingdom of Reichiger and is sent away by the king. However, Mukata starts cooking up delicious meals using his unconventional skill and makes a name for himself when he makes a contract with the legendary beast Fenrir. Four normal-looking people suddenly appear on a magic circle and find a group of mages and a princess watching them. One of the mages next to the princess exclaims that the heroes have responded to their summons, and another mage asks for permission to assess their abilities, pointing to a device similar to a mirror at one of the heroes who appears to be a student. The mage is shocked when his device reveals the hero to be a holy sword wielder with significant potential. He quickly assesses the next hero, discovering she can use multiple powerful elemental magics. The heroes look confused, but the princess is overjoyed by the results and asks them to save their kingdom, Reichiger, stating they are the only hope for it to be saved. Another hero, who looks like a normal office worker, nervously questions whether they have been transported to another world. The mage notices him and uses his device to appraise him. The results reveal his name as Mukata Tsuyoshi, age 27, with a unique skill that is revealed to be online grocery bro who knew you could get Amazon Prime in a magical world. Surprised, the others wonder how useful it will be, seeing which Mukata starts feeling embarrassed and asks if he has any additional skills. The mage confirms that online grocery is his sole skill before another mage approaches Mukata to inform him of a meeting with the king. While the other heroes are going to be fighting for their life, Mukata is going to be handing out shopping lists. The king explains that the Demon King is trying to invade the kingdom and requests their help to maintain peace. He also reveals that the Demon King knows how to return them to their worlds, so the heroes bravely agree to help without hesitation. However, Mukata nervously remarks that his skill is not well suited for combat and could act as an obstacle for the other heroes because of how pathetic and useless he is. Later, Mukata walks through a village, counting his coins and wondering if he has enough. Noticing villagers finding his clothes weird, he decides to buy new clothes before gathering more information. After purchasing new clothes, he checks out some shops and reserves an inn to rest. He is relieved he did not offer his help as a hero and remains suspicious of the royal family, thinking of leaving the country immediately. While resting, Mukata summons his status window and is excited when it quickly appears. He examines his stats and skills, curious about how he can utilize his unique skill, online grocery. It doesn't activate when he calls out the skill's name, so he touches it on the status window and a burst of light suddenly reveals a modern shopping website. Mukata selects bread and water but cannot proceed with checkout due to insufficient balance, so he uses some of his coins and the items appear before him. He starts eating the bread and realizes how convenient and useful his skill is. The next day, Mukata finds a carriage heading to a place called Keels. During the ride, he meets a traveling merchant and inquires about his appraisal skill and item box. The merchant is surprised and informs Mukata that these skills are quite valuable, hearing which Mukata decides to be more cautious to avoid appearing suspicious. The merchant also reveals that there have been rising tensions in the Reichiger kingdom and rumors about the kingdom closing its borders, shocking Mukata. Upon arriving in the next town, he learns from notices that all travel services are suspended and heads to an inn to gather more information. He discovers that the kingdom is currently going through various wars, so the higher-ups decided to pause travel services to prevent citizens from leaving, which could decrease the number of soldiers. The adventurers also decide to leave and suggest Mukata should do the same. Mukata then visits the Adventurers Guild to hire escorts for his journey on foot to the next kingdom. He is concerned about the 8 gold coin fee, but agrees due to how quickly he needs to leave. The receptionist introduces him to Werner, the leader of the C-rank adventurer group.
Hi.
Iron will, and after negotiating the terms, they decide to leave immediately. Before setting off, Werner introduces his team: Vincent, the swordsman, Rita, the scout, Ramon, the mage, and Franca, the healer. While traveling, they take a break and Mukata offers to prepare lunch. As he sets up his cooking equipment, Vincent notices his item box skill and Rita admires his stove. Mukata explains that he got the stove from a friend. While shopping, he surprisingly sees his stove for sale at 50 gold coins. He decides to purchase it through his online store instead, finding it much cheaper. He prepares sandwiches and soup for lunch, impressing the team particularly with the rich soup and instant onion soup from his online store. Werner praised Mukata for giving them such good food, and they continue their journey after a rest, running into monsters along the way. The adventurers swiftly manage to take them down and butcher a large boar, so Mukata stores it in his item box. When they stop for dinner, the team eagerly waits for another meal, and Mukata decides to cook the ginger-fried boar without relying on his online grocery items. He slices the meat thinly, marinates it in ginger sauce, shreds cabbage, and fries everything as the party looks forward to the meal from how good the food smells. Once the meal is ready, Mukata serves the ginger-fried boar, shocking he group with how good it is as Franca remarks that she usually avoids boar meat, but this dish is amazing. They eat happily and say the meal has made them feel sharper and less fatigued. Confused by their reaction, Mukata initially thinks they're saying that because of how delicious the food is and decides to use his appraisal skill on the food and is shocked to see it provides buffs to strength and MP. Realizing that casually giving out such powerful buffs could be dangerous, he decides to keep this secret. While they eat, a giant wolf that looks like a Fenrir silently observes them. The next day, as they set up camp before entering a forest, Mukata prepares to use the red boar they collected and avoids using his online grocery items this time. He slices the meat, marinates it in ginger sauce, and fries it, attracting the wolf with its aroma. Unaware, the group eagerly waits for the meal. Mukata finishes cooking and serves the ginger-fried boar. The team is amazed by the dish's flavor before Fenrir. The wolf suddenly appears and demands the same dish. Scared out of his wits, Mukata quickly complies and keeps constantly cooking more to feed the wolf. Pleased with the food, Fenrir decides to form a familiar contract with Mukata, shocking the adventurers. Scared, Mukata hesitantly tries to refuse, but under the wolf's fearsome gaze, he reluctantly agrees, so the wolf forms their contract, declaring that he expects 3 meals a day. Mukata is shocked when Fenrir, after signing the familiar contract, demands a name, so after thinking for a while, he suggests Pachi, but Fenrir doesn't like it, so Mukata tries other names including Koro, Shiro, and Hachi, noting they were popular dog names. Fenrir gets annoyed and declares that he isn't a dog. Mukata complains about Fenrir being picky, surprising the adventurers before he eventually suggests the name Fel, which Fenrir finally accepts. The next day, as they continue their journey, Fel starts attracting a lot of attention, and the group was concerned about crossing the border because of Fenrir since he's a legendary beast known for destroying entire countries. Werner explains that even if they managed to get through, the kingdom's authorities would likely go after Mukata because of his contract with Fenrir, worrying Mukata since he left Reidsiger to avoid these kinds of issues. Fenrir reassures Mukata, promising to handle any problems before asking for lunch. They decide to take a break, and Mukata checks his item box, realizing they had run out of red boar meat. Fel insists on having meat, so Mukata remarks that since he is the reason they had run out, he should go hunt for more, so Fel agrees and heads into the forest. Don't think that strategy is going to work a second time, especially on Legendary Wolf. Werner suggested using the remaining meat they had, but Mukata insists that Fel should provide his own meal. The adventurers are amazed by the fact that Mukata can give orders to Fenrir so freely. When Fel returns, he reveals that he's caught a massive monster and drops it in front of them. Werner recognizes it as a rockbird, a B-rank monster that can be quite troublesome, and they note that its claws and beak are really valuable. Since Mukata can't butcher the rockbird himself, he asks the adventurers for help in exchange for some of the monster's parts, and since Fel didn't mind how the meat is divided, they proceed with butchering the rockbird.
Oh boy, mealtime!
Mukata begins cooking using teriyaki sauce to fry the meat and prepares rockbird teriyaki and onion soup. Fel complains when he doesn't get a portion of the meal, but Mukata explains he'll prepare more meat for him. Fel agrees and patiently waits as Mukata cooks. He nearly eats all the remaining meat himself, after which they continue their journey. They finally reach the border of another kingdom, but before they can approach the gate, many soldiers come out because of Fel's presence. Werner quickly explains their situation to the soldiers, and despite his efforts, the soldiers remain cautious and surround Mukata's group. The commander questions if Fenrir is truly Mukata's familiar, so Mukata asks Fel to assure the soldiers that he won't harm the country or its people. Fel declares that he is not a mindless beast and would only act if provoked. The soldiers are amazed by Fel's ability to speak, and the commander finally accepts that Fenrir is actually Mukata's familiar, allowing them to enter the town. However, he's still wary of Fel and asks Mukata to ensure that Fel wouldn't cause trouble in the town. Fel is annoyed by Mukata's lecture, but is warned that his meals would be taken away if he caused any issues. Werner reassures the soldiers that Fenrir has never caused problems and that Mukata could even command him to hunt for food. He's forced to pay a fee for Fel's entry into the town since he didn't have a guild card, and their party is relieved to finally enter the kingdom. Werner reminds Mukata that nobles will approach him once they learn about Fel, which stresses him out. However, he calms down, realizing he won't be staying in the kingdom for long, so he plans to explore and earn money using his online grocery skill. Werner suggests registering with either the Adventurers Guild or the Merchants Guild to avoid entry taxes, so Mukata considers applying to the Merchants Guild to sell food and ingredients while traveling. Vincent adds that he might need the Adventurers Guild's help to handle a monster's Fel hunted, and Franca suggests registering with both guilds. They continue their journey, and upon arriving in the city, Mukata has to pay entry taxes again, worrying him. When he enters the city, a man approaches him and asks if he's Mukauta. The man introduces himself as a servant of Margrave Lindel, who wants to meet Mukauta because of his Fenrir familiar. Mukauta is reluctant to meet the Margrave, but the servant insists until Fel intervened, scaring him away. The servant, still persistent, respectfully asks if Fel would come along, but Fel intimidates him further, causing him to hurry away. Mukauta is concerned, but Fel remarks that it's necessary to scare the servant off. The adventurers agree, noting that only creatures at the level of dragons could challenge Fel. They go their separate ways, and Mukauta decided to head to the Merchants Guild first. After a short walk, Mukauta arrives at the Merchants Guild, where everyone keeps staring at Fel. Mukauta ignores the stares and approaches the receptionist, who explains that the Merchants Guild is independent of any country and outline the 5 ranks within the guild. When Mukauta says he plans to travel and sell food from stalls, she suggests that the Iron rank, the lowest rank, would be the most appropriate for him. After receiving his guild card, Mukauta asks if he could sell his items in the guild, planning to bring them the next day. He then heads to the inn but finds that familiars can only stay in the stables, but Fel doesn't mind and complains about being hungry since they had skipped lunch. Mukauta decided to prepare an early dinner, slicing meat for Fel and checking his online grocery store for rice. As the rice boiled, he fried the meat for Fel. Fel watches, drooling as he observes the meat cooking. Mukauta served the first batch and Fel gobbles it in one bite, requesting more. The second serving tastes different, and Mukauta explains it was flavored with grated daikon, while the first was garlic-flavored steak sauce. Fel is impressed by the variety of flavors and asks for more garlic-flavored meat. Mukauta continues cooking, and after the rice is ready, he makes a steak bowl with thin slices of steak, rice, and steak sauce. Fel watches Mukauta eat, unable to resist asking for the same food. He enjoys the rice even though he usually ate only meat, and Mukauta is grateful for his online grocery skill, which allows him to enjoy rice in this world. After cleaning up, Mukauta heads to his room, thinking back on his hectic day and remembering he has more to prepare. The next morning, Mukauta returned to the Merchants Guild with the items he wants to sell. The receptionist is surprised by the goods of his bag, excusing herself briefly before bringing him to the guild master's office. The guild master reveals that he was shocked by the high-quality salt and pepper, which are considered valuable enough to be treated as royal gifts. The guild master wants to buy all of it and asks about its source. Unable to reveal he obtained it from his world using his skill, Mukauta claims he acquired it while traveling here, in which the guild master apologizes for probing so deeply. He then offers 4 gold coins for the salt and 10 for the pepper. Mukauta is surprised by the high prices and can't seem to say anything out of awe, so the guild master thinks he's hesitating and increases the offer to 15 gold coins, then 16, and finally to 17 gold coins, his maximum limit. Mukauta is amazed that his 10 copper coins have turned into 17 gold coins so quickly and heads straight to the Adventurers Guild after selling the spices. At the Adventurers Guild, Mukauta registers, but the receptionist seemed uninterested and explains how the quest system works before confirming his registration. If Mukauta hadn't asked for more details, she wouldn't have provided additional information, and he realizes that adventurers need to be self-reliant. He picks a G-rank quest from the board to take on the next day and returns to the inn, where he finds Mel complaining about being hungry again and begins preparing their meal. Fel asks for garlic-flavored steak, saying he wouldn't mind eating it every day. Mukauta says he wants to try making more delicious food, intriguing Fel. As Fel happily eats his steak, Mukauta considered the dangers of garlic for dogs and decides to check Fel's status through his appraisal skill, but he's shocked by how maxed out Fel's stats are. The next morning, as Mukauta gets ready for his quest, Fel shows up, clearly annoyed and demanding that Mukauta make him a meal before he leaves. Even after breakfast, Fel complained that he's still hungry, so Mukauta explains that they've run out of ingredients and suggests Fel go hunting while he gathers the herbs needed for his quest. Fel agrees but used his skill on Mukauta to make sure he stays safe, sensing several monsters nearby. Mukauta thinks Fel would be quite impressive if he weren't so greedy. After Fel leaves, Mukauta checks what herbs he needs and starts searching for them. Since the quest is simple, he uses his appraisal skill to find Kelu grass and Maj grass. He finishes quickly and even gathers more than necessary. Next, Mukauta decides to prepare lunch and uses his online grocery service to buy ground beef, pork, meat sauce, and pasta. He starts by chopping and sauteing onions, then adds the ground meat and meat sauce, finishing with the consommé base. When Fel returns, he brings a rockbird, which surprises Mukauta. Fel says he enjoyed the teriyaki rockbird he had last time and hunted another one but couldn't carry all his spoils at once. Mukauta continued cooking, adding salt to the boiling water before cooking the pasta. Once the pasta is soft, he serves it with the sauce, but something is missing, so he uses his online grocery to buy Parmesan cheese and then finishes the spaghetti. Fel, curious, asks if they were eating boiled vines, but Mukuta explains it was a tasty dish from his world. Fel tries it and is impressed, especially with the grated cheese, which enhances the flavor. Mukuta feels that it's a luxury to enjoy such food even in this world. After the meal, Fel praises the food, his face covered in sauce, making Mukuta laugh. They then retrieve the monsters Fel had hunted, and Mukuta is amazed by the number and power of the monsters. Fel assures Mukuta that orc meat is commonly eaten in this world, so he reluctantly accepts. After storing the monsters, he decides they should return to town to deliver the carcasses to the Adventurer Guild and complete his quest. Fel suggests Mukuta ride on his back to save time. Excited, Mukuta climbs on, and Fel begins running at incredible speed. Mukuta struggles to hold on and is frightened of falling, so Fel says only weaklings would complain about it. But Mukuta insists that dying would mean losing access to his world's food, so Fel decides to slow himself down. At the Adventurers Guild, Mukuta submits the herbs, and the receptionist is impressed with the amount but thinks it's because of his luck. She becomes more talkative than before and gives Mukuta 9 silver coins and 3 copper coins as a reward. Remembering he needs to sell the monsters, Mukuta mentions the orcs, and the receptionist is skeptical, but calms down when she sees Fel and directs Mukuta to where he can sell the monsters. The guild's butcher approaches, intrigued by the mention of orcs, and leads Mukuta to the warehouse behind the guild and mentions hearing rumors about Mukuta and his Fenrir. Mukuta is surprised but begins taking out the monsters. The butcher is amazed by the number and rank of the monsters, so Mukuta asks if all of these are edible or if they'll end up like those weird things tubers eat and drink. The butcher confirms most were delicacies, so Mukuta requests only the meat, planning to sell the rest to the guild. The butcher agrees but says it would take until the next morning to process everything, and that Mukuta would be paid later. Mukuta asks for the meat of one monster immediately, and the butcher agrees, asking if orc meat is okay. Fel intervenes, saying he hasn't eaten orc meat in a while, so they will take it. The butcher processes it quickly, and Mukuta isn't sure how to cook it, so he checks his item box and finds parsley, parmesan cheese, eggs, and flour. He slices and pounds the meat, seasons it, and prepares an egg mixture. After frying the meat, he tops it with leftover meat sauce from lunch. The dish, true-flavored pork piccata with meat sauce, delights Fel, who says he can eat it forever. Mukuta hesitates but tries a bite, finding it similar to premium meat. He decides not to judge ingredients without trying them first, and the next morning, Mukuta returns to the guild warehouse for the processed meat. He's surprised by the amount and receives payment for the materials he sold minus 202 gold coins. The butcher explains the value of the materials and mentions the magic stones from high-rank monsters. He also discusses the rumors, confirming Fel was indeed a Fenrir, not just a great wolf. Mukuta realizes he should downplay Fel's status to avoid attracting any unwanted attention and tells Fel they should continue traveling, so Fel agrees, but is more focused on his meal. Seeing the mountain of meat makes Fel hungry, so Mukuta laughs and decides to stop at a place that looks like ruins for the night. Fel notes they could have traveled further if Mukuta had ridden on his back and asked for dinner, so Mukuta promises a treat due to their earnings. Fel eagerly joins Mukuta in checking the online grocery, and although focused on meat, Mukuta is surprised by the variety available. He brings multiple boxes of meat dishes, seeing which Fel excitedly tastes each dish, after which Mukuta cooks a Japanese black wagyu steak, but Fel is unhappy with the portion size. Mukuta explains the meat's cost, and Fel becomes interested. After tasting, Fel is thrilled by its tenderness and flavor, so Mukuta explained how carefully the cattle are raised to ensure high quality. Fel is surprised, noting that in a world full of beasts, hunting was enough for food. Mukuta serves another piece of meat, and they discuss food from his world. Mukuta explains that his country prioritizes food quality, which Fel thinks is because of his cooking skills. Fel is satisfied only after eating all the boxes of food, saying Mukuta's meals gave him energy and made him feel he could defeat an ancient dragon. Mukuta appraises Fel's status and sees a 50% increase in his stats. Fel, feeling powerful, suggests they go hunting to make use of his buffs, but Mukuta was hesitant, worried about other monsters appearing, so Fel creates a barrier that could deflect a dragon's breath. Fel set off to hunt, and Mukuta prepares his bed, quickly falling asleep in his Japanese futon. Meanwhile, Fel, still feeling buffed, easily defeats a rock bird and looks for stronger monsters. He kills a giant deer with lightning magic and then fights a group of orcs and an orc general that he easily manages to take down before facing a chimera. The next morning, Mukuta wakes up to a mountain of powerful monster corpses. Shocked, he declares that black wagyu is off the menu now. Mukuta and Fel are having breakfast, and Fel is enjoying the grilled cicatrice and noting how good it tastes. Mukata explains that cooking it slowly, starting with the skin to make it crispy, is the key. He serves Fel more cicatrice with lemon butter sauce and soy sauce, so Fel mentions it tastes lighter than rockbird, but still likes it. Mukata compares it to the difference between chicken and duck, which makes Fel eager to hunt the monster again. Curious about Fel's hunting methods, Mukata asks how he hunts, so he explains he uses claws and teeth, but prefers magic for large groups of weak monsters. He proudly mentions that his wind magic is strong due to a blessing from the goddess Ninmur. Mukata is impressed and wonders if he can use magic too. Fel says it's possible if he has some magic power. Mukata checks his status window and confirms he does before asking Fel how to use it. Fel tells Mukata to think about using magic, but Mukata's attempt at fire magic fails, making him feel embarrassed. Fel suggests Mukata practice more and helps him by letting him feel the flow of magic. Mukata practices and manages to cast a fireball, but it's weak and misses the target, surprising Fel. Fel notes this is expected due to Mukata not having any training in magic. Fel suggests Mukata needs battle experience, but Mukata is reluctant because he doesn't want to get hurt. Does he need a pacifier? What about a cup of milk? Fel says minor injuries are part of the learning process, but Mukata refuses. Annoyed, Fel drives Mukata to a group of goblins and Mukata, still hesitant, tries to run away, but Fel howls to attract the goblins. Mukata tries to fight but trips and struggles to keep his distance. When goblin attacks, a barrier protects him, but more goblins start attacking the barrier. Desperate, Mukata casts fireball non-stop until he nearly collapses. Fel returns at night to deal with the remaining goblins, and later, when Mukata wakes up, he's still tense. Fel asks about his first battle experience, believing it must have been valuable, but Mukata annoyingly says it was a terrible experience and expects nightmares. Fel praises Mukata's fireball and says he's the one responsible for his progress. Mukata complains about being thrown into a goblin settlement as a beginner, but Fel says it's because Mukata didn't make much progress and notices Mukata's level has increased. He checks his status window and sees improved stats and a new fire magic skill. Fel gives Mukata a Goblin King, a high-rank monster with a magic stone, as a congratulatory gift, and even though he says it's a gift, he hopes Mukata will treat him to Wagyu steak with the earnings. Mukata declines, saying they have plenty of meat and money from Fel's last hunt. Fel reluctantly gives up on the treat but continues to complain about being hungry, hearing which Mukata regrets the previous Wagyu steak treat. Feeling dizzy, Mukata collapses while trying to prepare their meal, so Fel asks why he's acting foolishly. Mukata explains he's exhausted from running out of magic. Mukata buys sweet bread online, thinking they need something sweet, and Fel, curious about the smell, demands meat, but Mukata, too tired to cook, starts eating the bread. After eating the sweet bread, Mukata feels better, and Fel starts eating too. Fel is impressed by the variety of bread and quickly finishes it.
That was so yummy!
He asks for more, surprising Mukata with his liking for sweets. Mukata warns Fel about potential health issues from eating too many sweets, but Fel declares that he can't get sick due to his goddess blessing, which makes him immune to poisons, sickness, and status ailments, surprising Mukata. Fel explains that his talent in wind magic and the goddess's blessing make him very skilled. Mukata acknowledges the advantage of such a blessing and, inspired, shouts to the gods and Buddha, asking for a blessing himself. Meanwhile, a lady with a mischievous smile watches from a well. The next morning, they arrive in town, but people flee in fear at the sight of Fel, causing a commotion that attracts soldiers. The soldiers surround Mukata and Fel, pointing spears at them, so Mukata hurriedly shows his guild card and explains that Fel is his familiar. The soldier asks if Fel is a great wolf, surprised that a new E-rank adventurer has tamed such a high-rank monster. Fel wants to correct this, but is interrupted by Mukata. Fel uses telepathy to communicate with Mukata, surprising him before the soldier advises Mukata to be careful about entering other towns with a great wolf. While returning Mukata's guild card, Fel again insists he is not a great wolf, but Mukata is still surprised by telepathy, and Fel explains that they can communicate this way due to their familiar contract. Mukata questions why Fel didn't mention this sooner, but Fel says it wasn't necessary before. While using telepathy, the soldier explains Mukata's responsibilities and potential punishments. Mukata, frightened by the punishments, agrees to comply, but Fel continues to attract attention in the town. Mukata decides he needs a map and plans to leave Fel at the inn stable. Fel keeps asking Mukata several questions about his return time and what he will do if he can't find a map. Mukata, calling Fel possessive, reassures him he'll be back in the evening and gives him food to quiet him before leaving. Mukata visits a bookstore and finds a book about magic for which the store owner quotes a price of 7 gold coins, shocking Mukata. He learns that paper is rare and expensive in this world, so he asks about a world map but is told it's a restricted item and not available in the bookstore. Disappointed, Mukata goes to the town library, but after paying 2 silver coins for entry, he finds it closed, which frustrates him. He returns to the inn, where Fel is annoyed from hunger. Mukata decides to prepare dinner and buys yakitori and tonkatsu online. Fel is curious about the food and Mukata explains it before Fel enjoys it, praising the sweet and salty flavors. Fel's mood improves and Mukata feels relieved. As he eats his pork cutlet with Worcester sauce on rice, Fel hungrily asks for more food, saying his meal wasn't enough. While exploring the town, Mukata ends up at a pub, and since he needs information, he endures the awkwardness and offers free drinks to adventurers in exchange for information. The adventurers tell him that after Reichseger's new king took power, the kingdom started expanding its territory, leading to wars. The most stable kingdoms are Ermin and Leonhardt to the east, known for their many dungeons, which are good for adventurers. Mukata is interested in dungeons but scared to enter them. The adventurers, noticing Mukata's difficulty finding a map, offer to sell him 1 for 1 gold, claiming it's a special gift from a retired adventurer. Excited, Mukata buys the map, only to later find out it's available for 1 silver coin at the Adventurers Guild. He feels cheated but accepts that this is how things work in this world. The next day, Mukata and Fel continue their journey, and he's still upset about being ripped off, but Fel reassures him they can easily earn more.
It's all fine, don't worry about it.
This cheers Mukata up and he decides they should head east to a coastal country, which Fel agrees with, thinking about how delicious sea serpents and krakens are. Mukata falls off of Fel's back as he takes him to a lake, remarking that he currently has a craving for fish. He steps forward and uses his lightning to instantly kill dozens of fish. Surprised, Mukata slowly picks out all the fish except for the poisonous ones, explaining to Fel that they can be harmful to him. Next, he picks out the ingredients while Fel keeps insisting on getting some meat. Mukata cleans out the trouts and grills them before cleaning the king trout, layering some onions, layering it with the fish and spices, enoki mushrooms, sake, and a pat of butter. After that, he makes some fish munir and he and Fel happily relish in how well the food turned out. Later, Mukata satisfyingly goes to check the fish, but his foot accidentally bumps into a slime which Fel remarks must have been here when he cast the barrier around them, but there isn't any need to fear a slime since it must be a weakling. Mukata admires how cute it is and remarks that it looks hungry. However, they're out of food. The slime goes around and starts eating the trash, so Mukata happily thanks it for clearing the camp for them and cuddles it in his arms. Fel remarks that they seem to share a nice bond and reveals that the slime has become Mukata's familiar, surprising him. He decides to name it Sui. The next day, Mukata tries practicing his earth magic, but Fel remarks that it's still weak, so they should get him some actual battle experience. However, Mukata recalls fighting the goblins and says he's never doing that again. That night, he makes marinated orc meat for Sui as well, and he really seems to enjoy it too since they ask for seconds. Since this is Sui's first time having a meal, Mukata says they should have some dessert and makes dorayaki for them, which both his familiars enjoy. The next morning, Mukata wakes up to see Fel saying he has an important matter to discuss with him. He reveals that the goddess of wind, Ninru, sent him a divine message yesterday. She heard Mukata's wishes and is willing to bless him. However, there is a single condition. She wishes to receive otherworldly sweets as offerings once a week. You would think that since she's a god, she could just summon sweets for herself, but I guess she has to beg too. Stunned, Mukata questions why she specifically asked for that. He wonders if she wants those sweets so badly and sends her the specific items she asked for, after which he successfully receives her blessing. Meanwhile, Ninru happily can't stop gobbling up the items at once and says it's not her fault because these sweets are just too good. Mukata tests his magic again and sees that it hits much harder and has improved due to the blessing. He notices that Sui has grown to level 13 as well and wonders if he'll keep evolving to grow stronger. He and Sui eat some chocolates before Fel appears and demands some as well. Suddenly, Ninru sends a divine message and tells him to send her chocolates and dorayaki, which he wearily complies with, remarking that this is more like harassment. Fel remarks that he's devoted to his prayer and tells him to get up on his back before rushing into the forest so that he can improve his magic. Mukata asks Fel why he brought him to the entrance of a cave, but Fel clarifies that's actually a dungeon. Mukata is still worried, asks for the reason again, so Fel explains that dungeons sometimes form in areas with high concentrations of mana, and the one in front of them just recently appeared. However, Mukata demands more information, so Fel explains that the real reason they were there was for Mukata to gain some battle experience. He adds that Mukata's fire magic has improved greatly through combat, so he believes that training in the dungeon would also enhance Mukata's earth magic. Mukata, feeling uneasy, tries to walk away, but Fel pulls him back and assures him that the dungeon was full of weak creatures. Fel says he had already checked it out and it was safe, and he intends to use his barrier to protect Mukauta. He remarks that he was doing this to make sure Mukauta would be strong enough for times when Fel couldn't protect him. After glancing at Sui for confirmation, Fel prepares to proceed. Mukauta then says he needed to prepare by using supplies from his online grocery store, and Fel is surprised when he pulls out various types of food. Mukauta explains that these otherworldly foods give temporary buffs, which is why Fel had felt stronger after eating the black wagyu steak earlier. Fel understands and looks at the food with interest. Mukauta decides to eat a little of each item to see what effects they have and leave the rest for Fel and Sui. As Mukauta begins eating, Fel notices that his stats are increasing, and Mukauta also feeds Sui, who even ate the containers. Fel wonders if the containers provide buffs, but Mukauta explains that they increased Sui's level instead. Fel concludes that Sui could keep leveling up before Mukauta moved on to the desserts and kept eating until he couldn't eat anymore. Checking his status, Mukauta sees that his stats have increased by about 20%. He also checks Fel and Sui's stats, noting that Fel has gained huge buffs and Sui's stats and level had both improved. Fel then urges Mukauta that they are ready to enter the dungeon, and despite his fear, Mukauta agrees to go in, drawing his sword and asking Fel to activate his barrier. Sui confidently leads the way while Mukauta walks cautiously behind. Fel has to nudge Mukauta to keep him moving, and the first monster they encountered was a slime. He hesitates to attack because it looked like Sui, but Sui quickly kills the slime with one hit. Fel praises Sui and explained that Sui's attack was highly concentrated acid. He tells Mukauta to act next, so he uses his stone bullet to kill a slime with a single shot, which pleases him. Meanwhile, Sui continues to kill other slimes effortlessly, and Fel explains that dungeons absorb everything that dies inside, whether monsters or people, shocking Mukauta. They go deeper into the dungeon and run into horned rabbits. Mukauta panics and finds his sword ineffective against the rabbit's horn. They then encounter some goblins, and even though Mukauta was supposed to practice his earth magic, he uses fire magic out of fear. Fel is annoyed and guides him through the process. Mukauta wonders why the monsters keep attacking despite Fel's presence, so Fel explains that monsters in dungeons attack anything that enters, regardless of strength. Mukauta is surprised by the fact that anyone would venture into such a dangerous place before Fel warns him that they will be facing face kobolds next. Not knowing what kobolds are, Mukauta tries to run away in fear, but Fel tells him that he couldn't escape the kobolds and has to fight, so Mukauta quickens his magic casting and makes his stone bullets stronger. Mukauta is proud of his progress, but Fel remarks that he still needs to improve. Determined to get better, Mukauta gets ready for the challenge, so Fel informs him that the final floor would have 10 kobolds, but when they arrive, there were way more than they expected. Mukauta wants to flee, but is pulled back by Fel, who tells him to fight with Sui's help and assures him that the barrier would protect him. Even with this reassurance, Mukauta is still scared, while Sui looks excited. Fel pushes Mukauta into the fight against the kobolds. Frozen with fear, Mukauta is safe behind Fel's barrier while Sui quickly kills multiple kobolds. Encouraged by Fel, he starts fighting and casting his stone bullet repeatedly, while Sui continues using his acid attack and excitedly enjoys the battle. Eventually, they almost defeat all the kobolds, but the remaining ones try to escape. Their bodies are suddenly thrown back by Fel before a giant kobold, the Kobold King, appears because of how many kobolds have been killed. Mukauta is annoyed that Fel hadn't warned him earlier, but still feels motivated to fight. When the Kobold King starts attacking, Mukauta runs away again, so Fel reminds him to fight back, and Mukauta uses his stone bullet, which seems ineffective. Fel then tells him that the barrier might not withstand the Kobold King's attacks. Mukauta charges his stone bullet and manages to injure the king. However, he runs out of magic power and has to wait for the monster's attack. To his surprise, the Kobold King isn't able to breach Fel's barrier, and Sui then unleashes a huge amount of acid on it, which melts it quickly. Sui's body starts glowing and she levels up as Mukauta suddenly falls unconscious. When he wakes up, he's outside the dungeon and Sui is anxiously checking on him. Sui, now able to talk, expresses relief that Mukauta is safe, and he surprisingly learns that Sui can talk after the battle with the Kobold King. Sui also begins calling Mukauta Master, surprising him. He happily hugs Sui and thinks he's even more adorable now. He checks their statuses and sees that both he and Sui have leveled up a lot, and Sui has acquired a new skill. Seeing that Sui now had higher stats than him, Mukauta feels a bit down, so Sui worryingly asks if he isn't happy about leveling up. He quickly reassures Sui that he's very happy for him, which makes Sui jump with joy. Mukauta then remembers Fel and learns that he suddenly left. Curious about Sui's ability to talk, Makoto asks if it's special for his kind, but Sui simply says he's just Sui. Fel unexpectedly arrives with his mouth covered in blood and explains that he was out hunting while Makoto was unconscious, but admits that Mukaba's food is still better. Fel asks Makoto to prepare him something as a reward and adds that Mukoto's earth magic has improved, so he should treat him to otherworldly meals. Makoto points out that Fel had missiled him about the barrier breaking, which pushed him to use his full power, so he had no complaints. He then uses his online grocery to order ingredients for their meal, and begins preparing by slicing onions, cutting rockbird meat into pieces, whisking eggs, and adding fish stock, soy sauce, mirin, and sugar to a pan. He simmers the meat and eggs, then adds the remaining eggs to complete the dish. Both Fel and Sui eagerly wait for the meal, and Fel is impressed with how the eggs were cooked, and Sui is thrilled. Fel quickly eats his portion and asks for seconds despite having just hunted. Sui also wants more food, even though he still has some left, insisting he would eat it after finishing his current bowl, seeing which Makoto laughs. After the meal, Sui plays energetically, while Makoto and Fel rest. Makoto asks Fel if he and Sui had talked while he was unconscious, so Fel confirmed they had, but Sui suddenly appears and calls Fel uncle. Fel starts blushing, so Makoto cheerily teases him. Fel tries to get Sui to stop calling him uncle, stating that Makoto should be called uncle as well. He raises his voice at Sui, but Sui begins crying, so he reluctantly agrees to let Sui call him uncle, delighting Sui as Makoto happily admires her cuteness. I think there's a little bit of bias here. As the group is heading into the forest, Makoto worryingly asks why they have to head straight into Orthros and Griffin territory, so Fel says he doesn't need to worry because the lower monsters don't dare to approach him out of fear. Suddenly, they get surrounded by a small group of Orthros, making Makoto panic. However, Fel isn't fazed and remarks that they seem to be the young and careless fools who overestimate themselves. He easily tears apart an Orthros that rushes towards him, shocking Makoto and scaring the other Orthros away. Sui excitedly asks what that technique was, so Fel says that's his special move, Rending Claw, that lets him imbue his claws with magic and send it as a slash. Later, Makoto learns that it'll take them about 3 weeks to get through the forest and worryingly notes that they don't have enough meat to last until then. He uses the snake meat to make chili black serpent, intriguing Fel and Sis, reprised by how delicious it tastes. He keeps making more for Sui and Fel, but realizes they ate up his portions too, so he makes the last 2 remaining pieces of meat to make a sandwich for himself. Later, they find some healing mushrooms, and after swallowing some of them, Sui evolves and gains a skill that lets him create powerful potions from now on. They keep moving and suddenly run into a griffin that asks Fel to fight him so that he can be accepted by his tribe. Fel agrees, but Makoto telepathically tells him to go easy on it so that the little bitch doesn't die in 1 millisecond. When the smoke clears and the battle ends, the griffin is lying on the ground with several fatal injuries, so Makoto hurriedly rushes forward and heals it with Sui's potions. He tells it that it managed to slightly damage Fel, seeing which all the other griffins accept him as their leader. The head's griffin gives Makoto a feather and vows that they will never hurt him or his descendants when they pass through this forest. Sometime later, when the group finally leaves the forest, they see a caravan getting attacked by thieves, so Fel quickly scares them out of their wits and the adventurers bind the thieves. Well, they definitely look like some useless thieves who didn't even try and go up against a random wolf. The head of the group introduces himself as Lambert and says they're heading to Carolina, so Makoto and his party ask to go with them as well. As the party starts traveling, the adventurers can't stop talking about Fel, wondering if he was really a Fenrir or just a great wolf. Makoto is curious about how these rumors had reached Leonhardt, so one of the adventurers explains that guilds use teleportation tools to exchange letters, which makes sense of how the rumors spread. Makoto is worried that other countries might try to recruit Fel and is also concerned that his online grocery and otherworlder status might be revealed. When the caravan stops for the night, Fel reminds Makoto of the feast he had promised, so they need to find a quiet spot away from the caravan. Both Sui and Fel demand more meat, so Makoto agrees and takes out the remaining meat and seasonings from his item box, cut the breast into small pieces, and mixed it with garlic, wine, and soy sauce. After massaging it, he adds flour and shakes the bag before deep frying the meat. As Makoto enjoyed the karaji, praising its flavor, Fel happily eats his portion. Seeing how quickly his familiars finish the karaji, Makoto cooks another batch, but the smell reaches the caravan and people start looking for the source. When Makoto finishes the new batch, the merchant and adventurers eagerly keep staring at it, so he offers them some, and they're amazed by how delicious it is, trying to eat as much as they could. Makoto doesn't get any of the food as the group and his familiars eat everything before Fel asks more, but there isn't any more meat left. The adventurers praise Mukata's cooking and offer to take the night watch so he can rest. The next morning, they arrive in Carolina, the 5th largest city in Leonhardt, where the merchant explains that his family had been leather merchants in the city for generations. The adventurers hand over the group of thieves to the knights and say goodbye to Mukata and the merchant. Mukata decides to visit the Adventurers Guild first, and the receptionist tells him his membership has been revoked because he hasn't completed quests in a month. Mukata explains he had been busy, and the receptionist explains that G-rank adventurers should complete as many quests as possible to advance to F-rank, which only requires one quest every 3 months. Mukata has to re-register and says he will also be registering another familiar. When asked, he proudly introduces Sui, the slime, surprising the receptionist while the other adventurers start laughing, but Mukata doesn't worry about them. While waiting for the guild butcher, Lars' group arrive and ask if they can watch the monster processing. Mukata agrees, and they are shocked when he pulls out a huge number of high-level monster corpses from his item box, which convinces them that Fel is actually a Fenrir. Excited, the guild butcher explains how they can extract valuable materials from the monsters. Realizing that the meat from the previous day's meal was luxurious, the adventurers apologize to Mukata and offer their help if he needs anything in the city. He then heads to an inn recommended by Lars and starts planning his next moves. Although he doesn't really want to be an adventurer, he remarks that he needs to reach F rank so he could have the guild butcher handle the monsters Fel hunted. While resting, the goddess complains about not receiving enough offerings, so Mukata buys some sweets from his online grocery and prays, after which the goddess happily reminds Sweetsimp to not forget offerings in the future, after which Mukata hugs Sui and goes to sleep. The next morning, he returns to the guild to find quests that will help him reach F rank, and initially wanted to choose a quest to gather herbs, but Fel tells him to hunt goblins. Ignoring Fel, Mukata focuses on his task, but Fel uses telepathy to explain that goblin hunting is important for reaching F rank quickly, and even wakes Sui up to convince Mukata. Sui eagerly says he wants to has goblins, but Mukata tries to focus on gathering herbs. Sui preferred fighting because he already had the skill to make potions, so Mukata reluctantly accepts a goblin hunting quest and sets out to find goblins. When they run into a horde of goblins, Sui immediately uses his acid attack, killing 3 goblins quickly. Mukata is impressed but worries about the quest requirement to collect goblin ears as proof. He starts struggling, and Fel is frustrated with Mukata's reaction despite his experience with high-level monsters. Another horde of goblins arrives, so Fel gives them instructions while Sui happily kills the goblins with acid. Mukata wants to stop, having exceeded the quest requirements, but Sui's cuteness convinces him to continue. Fel drives Mukata to hunt more goblins until they clear the area, after which Sui thanked him, but Fel forces him to cut off all the goblin ears. They suddenly realize that leaving the goblins' corpses could attract stronger monsters or cause a dungeon to appear, so Fel suggests using Sui's acid to melt the goblins. Sui agrees, and after evolving into a much larger slime, quickly melts the corpses. Mukata asks Fel if he has ever seen something like this before, and Fel admits he hasn't. Mukata realizes that Sui's new ability would make him much stronger and useful for potion making before Sui complains about being hungry. They move to a different location to decide on food, and Mukata suggests bread, which Fel is fine with, and Sui loves any food Mukata makes. Mukata offers various types of bread, and Sui happily tries them all, so Fel enjoys the bread with meat and praises Mukata's cooking. As Mukata eats and drinks sweet coffee, he thinks of their day and worryingly realizes that killing so many goblins would probably get him to F rank in one day, suffering from success, am I right? Mukata returns to the Adventurers Guild to turn in his quest and attracts a lot of attention because he's carrying several large bags filled with goblin ears. While some of the guild staff are busy checking the bags, another employee came up to him and told Mukata that the guild master wanted to meet him and his familiars. Mukata goes to see the guild master, Willem, who introduces himself and says he's been excited to meet a Fenrir. Sui comes out of Mukata's bag when he hears about the goblins, and Willem notices that Mukata and Sui are communicating telepathically. Mukata brags about how strong and special Sui is, which makes Willem even more interested in their group. Willem then reveals why he wanted to meet Mukata and says the royal palace of Leonhardt is pleased to have a Fenrir in their kingdom because it could be a significant threat to other kingdoms. In return for protection and freedom from other nobles, they ask Mukata to help in emergencies. Mukata says he's happy about this arrangement, so Willem about his plans to advance to F rank and offers to promote him directly to C rank because he has a Fenrir as a familiar in exchange for completing some quests. Mukata declines the offer, but Willem explained that the quests are S rank and meant specifically for Fel. Fel proudly declared that he's ready, pleasing Willem. Willem says he wants them to start preparing for Fel's quest immediately, and upon noticing Willem's familiarity with his situation, Mukata decides to offer to sell the boss-level monsters Fel had hunted. The guild butcher, Johan, is amazed by the Orthros and Chimera, but is instructed by Willem to keep everything confidential. Mukata explains that he keeps the monsters hidden to avoid attracting attention and reveals them now because he trusts Willem and Johan. Willem informs Mukata that while his guild could buy most of the monsters, they don't have enough funds for the Chimera and Orthros, as Johan eagerly examines the monsters, noting that they are S rank or at least close to it, making them extremely rare and valuable. Suddenly, Sui comes out of his bag after seeing the monsters and wishes he could defeat high-rank monsters like Fel, but Mukata is worried about his eagerness. Willem tells Mukata to return the next day for the payment and his C-rank guild card. Mukata then asks his familiars what they wanted for dinner, and as usual, they both asked for meat. He goes shopping for ingredients that would go well with the meat and starts by boiling rockbird breasts in water with sake and salt. He also slices tomatoes and cucumbers and shreds the cooked rockbird meat with Sui's help and adds sesame dressing, making rockbird banbanji. Next, he prepares rockbird and pepper stir-fry, cutting the rockbird into bite-sized pieces and seasoning it with sake and soy sauce. He slices bell peppers and sears both the meat and peppers in a pan, adding Chinese seasoning paste. Fel remarks that the meal isn't just meat but still makes him drool, after which Mukata enjoys some beer, and then starts eating. Both he and Sui like the sesame dressing, and Mukata gives Sui the banbanji with oyster and soy sauce, which Sui also enjoys. Since Mukata had forgotten to steam the rice, he decides to make sandwiches instead. After several servings, they finish eating and realize the stable is cramped for Fel, so Sui considers melting it, but Mukata stops him and instead makes a futon to make Fel more comfortable. The next day, Mukata returns to the guild and collects his guild card, which is now silver because he's been promoted to C rank, which means that he only needs to complete one quest every 6 months to keep his membership, which is convenient for him. Willem also gives Mukata the payment for the monsters he had sold, and he's shocked to receive 461 gold coins for one batch of monsters, a large sum compared to his previous earnings. Willem calculates the total, and Mukata is even more surprised when he sees it came to 1,415 gold coins, not including the rewards for clearing the goblin settlement. Adding these rewards, the final total is 1,946 gold coins, shocking Mukata and making him worry that having over 2,000 gold coins might make him a target for thieves. Willem then explains the quests he needs Fel to complete, and Fel has to hunt a metal lizard found among packs of bloody hornbills. Willem describes the metal lizard's location and abilities, noting that its metallic scales make it nearly immune to physical attacks, and a hornbill's violent nature and large groups make the quest difficult. However, Willem and Fel agree that the bull's meat was very tasty. Fel is excited about the prospect of eating the bull's meat, especially with Mukata's cooking skills, but Willem is concerned by Fel and Mukata's creepy laughter. After leaving the guild, Mukata and Fel plan to leave for the quest, and he thinks they should leave the next morning, but Fel is eager to start right away to taste the grilled bull meat. They decide to leave in the morning as Mukata has other preparations to make. Mukata visits Lambert's shop, where he lets Sui choose a new bag. In addition, he also buys a new purse, boots, and a belt with a sheath. The total cost add 11 gold coins, but Lambert refuses to accept payment, saying he's grateful for Mukata saving his life. Lambert also mentions how expensive the meat had been during their travels and asks if Mukata still has the serpent skin from earlier. But since Mukata has sold most of the monsters, including the serpent skin, Lambert says he could buy it next time if Mukata has it. After leaving, Fel complains about how long Mukata had stayed in the shop, but he's happy with his new items, including Sui's bag. Fel then asks Mukata to cook snake for dinner, having developed a craving from their earlier conversation, which Sui agrees with, recalling how much he enjoyed the karaj. Mukata decides to prepare an elaborate dinner as a preparation for the next morning's quest and marinates the meat and plans to cook a soy sauce and salt base like before. He intends to make enough food to satisfy his two familiars, and after mixing the meat with flour and seasonings, he fries it at a low temperature first and then at a high temperature to make it crispy. When Mukata tries the first batch of karaj, Fel and Sui urge him to serve it immediately and quickly devour it, with Sui noticing the improved taste from frying it twice. Before Mukata can cook another batch, Fel and Sui finish their servings and ask for more. Mukata happily continues frying and saves some meat for himself. Mukata also uses the remaining oil to fry tonkatsu and chicken katsu, and as Mukata enjoys his meal and beer, he doesn't realize that Fel and Sui have already fallen asleep and continues happily eating with a beer while watching the moon. That's the average male fantasy, isn't it? Fel and Mukata arrive at a mountain where they were supposed to hunt a metal lizard for their first quest. Mukata checks the quest details to pinpoint the monster's location, but Fel quickly spots it after examining the mountain. Fel leads him to a cave where they immediately find the metal lizard busy eating the metals within the mountain. Interested in the creature's shiny scales, Mukauta uses his appraisal skill and discovers it has evolved into a Mithril lizard. Fel explained that Mithril's magic resistance would have the effectiveness of magic against it, and worries this would make the hunt difficult, even for Fel. However, Fel's lightning magic quickly defeats the lizard as his magic is too powerful for Mithril to resist. Seeing the lizard in such a state, Mukauta starts feeling a bit bad for it, and while he's storing the lizard in his item box, he notices Mithril scattered throughout the cave. He wonders if it could be used for crafting weapons or armor, and decides to collect some with Sui's help. Fel, noticing Mukauta's intentions, declares that nothing, including Mithril ore or the Mithril lizard, is stronger than his barrier. Later, Fel is eager to move on to their second quest and drags Mukauta to the new location, excited at the prospect of eating horned bull meat. Mukauta is nervous when he learns that the bulls are as large as rhinoceroses and very aggressive. When Fel finds the pack of bulls, Mukauta decides to stay back and let Fel handle the battle. However, Sui, seeing Fel fight, decides to join in, wanting to participate as well. An explosion suddenly takes place and Mukauta is thrown by the blast. When he recovers, he sees that all the bulls are dead. Sui proudly declares that he helped finish off the bulls that survived Fel's wind magic and is thrilled to receive praise from his uncle. Sui then helps him gather the bull carcasses, after which they take a break and eat sandwiches made from pork cutlets Mukauta had prepared the day before. Mukauta tries to view it as a picnic, but he can't ignore the sight of the bloody horned bulls forming a small mountain of corpses. Meanwhile, Sui becomes curious about the soft drinks Mukauta was drinking, so he let him try it and Sui enjoys the fizzy sensation. Seeing this, Fel becomes curious too and drinks 1.5 liters of the soft drink before feeling satisfied and constantly burping. Sui, initially embarrassed, can't stop burping as well, which makes Mukauta laugh. They return to the Adventurer Guild to complete their quest, and Johan and Willem are shocked to see the metal lizard had evolved into a Mithril lizard. They have difficulty believing it until they examine the lizard's scale, confirming its rarity. Mukauta asks about how rare the Mithril lizard is, so Johan explains that the last recorded sighting was 400 years ago, and that the Mithril vein where they hunted the lizard is really important as there are only 3 mountains worldwide with Mithril deposits. Willem adds that the Mithril lizard will likely be presented to the king by the city lord, and Mukauta will receive at least 5,000 gold coins in addition to the original reward. Mukauta is overwhelmed by the amount of money he would receive, so Johan reassures him about his financial worries, and Willem reminded Mukauta to keep everything secret.
Oh, we can't tell anyone about this. That is the last thing in the—
He then asks Mukauta to handle the bloody horn bulls quickly, and Johan and Willem are shocked when Mukauta reveals all the bull corpses from his item box. Mukauta feels anxious about being involved in such an important matter, but Fel and Sui are excited about the high-quality meat they would enjoy for dinner. Back at the inn, Mukauta begins preparing dinner immediately and cuts the bull meat into thick slices, seasons it with salt and pepper, and heats a pan. He sears the meat for 2 minutes on each side, then wraps it in foil to let it rest and distribute the heat evenly. When the meat is almost ready, both Fel and Sui eagerly check their food, and they're all satisfied after their first bite. Fel compares the meat to his favorite Wagyu steak, and the two familiars quickly finish their first servings, so Mukauta prepares a second batch with garlic-flavored steak sauce, along with sauces made from truffle, onion, and grated daikon. They don't stop eating until they're completely full. While resting, Fel remarks that he won't be able to eat raw meat again because everything tastes better with Mukauta's cooking. Sui also praises Mukauta, and Mukauta feels grateful for his familiars, which motivate him to continue cooking delicious meals for them. After going to his room with Sui, Mukauta opens his online grocery account to select sweets for Ninmur, making a large offering. Despite this, Ninmur requests more sweets like cake, pudding, and daifuku. After sending a whole box of sweets, Mukauta is surprised when other goddesses suddenly appear and begin speaking to him. The 3 goddesses who had been observing Ninmur all along complain about her selfishness, but Ninmur defends herself, saying the offerings were in exchange for the blessings she had given Mukauta. The 3 goddesses then offer their blessings in exchange for offerings, and although Mukauta isn't sure he needed them, one of the goddesses argue that he doesn't have an affinity with Ninmur's wind element, so he isn't fully immune to negative effects. She also remarks that earth and fire magic suited him better, so their blessings would be more beneficial. Despite Mukauta being reluctant, the goddesses give their blessings without waiting for his consent, stunning Ninmur. The goddess of water, Rusalka, can't bless Mukauta since he doesn't have an affinity with water and begins to cry, fearing she wouldn't receive offerings if he didn't accept her blessing. The other goddesses are alarmed by Rusalka's tears and urges Mukauta to take responsibility. Seeing this, Mukauta decides to ask her to bless Sui instead, so she gladly gives Sui her blessing after confirming his affinity with water. The three other goddesses sigh in relief, and Kisharl then explains that Rusalka reserves her blessings for every 100 years, unlike the other goddesses who give theirs every decade, which had even angered the god of creation. Mukabana is shocked by the goddess's carelessness and sends them another box of sweets, asking them to share it equally without quarrels. Exhausted, he checks his status to see if he's received additional blessings, and Sui is curious. So Mukoda explains that they're protections from the goddesses and that he had also received them, so they decide to test their new blessings the next day. Though Fel still considers him weak, Mukoda is happy with the increase in his fire and earth magic. Sui tests his water magic, impressing Mukoda with its strength before Sui shows off another powerful skill, scaring Mukoda. He reminds Sui not to use it on people or in the city, and even Fel is impressed, thinking Sui is strong enough to duel with him. But Mukoda quickly declines. Mukoda practices his earth magic while Fel goes hunting. When Fel returned with the snake, he asks for meals after Mukoda sells the snake skin. Instead, Mukoda proudly shows off a house he had built using his earth magic and remarks that they should appreciate it more. Bro's just asking for some validation to make himself feel good. I hear you, mate. The group sleep comfortably in the house Mukoda built, and he remarks that he's still very proud of it. Fel can't argue anymore since he also slept well in the house. Fel asks Mukoda about their plans and says he wants to go hunting, but since Mukoda is now a C-rank adventurer, daily hunting isn't necessary, so Mukoda decides to head back to the guild to sell the black serpent skin to Lambert. When he returns to the guild, he makes even more money because Johan has already butchered the remaining bulls. After selling the black serpent's parts, except for the meat and skin, Mukoda and his companions go back to the inn, and Sui, who was already asking for his meal, sees Mukoda proudly reveal his new plan for the day. He discloses that he bought a meat grinder online and wants to show how it works using horned bull meat.
Oh, yes, I do.
Sui, finding it fun, helps grind a large amount of meat due to his strength. Mukoda then chops onions finely and mixes them with milk, breadcrumbs, meat, eggs, and the sauteed onions. He seasons this mixture with salt and pepper, then kneads it and shapes it into small patties with Sui's help. He decides to store half of the patties for later and grills the rest, while Sui and Fel watch excitedly. Once the patties are cooked, he pours ketchup and Worcestershire sauce over them before serving, exciting Fel. The three happily eat their meal, and Fel immediately starts eating while Sui checks the ingredients and happily eats. After the meal, Sui cleans the dishes as usual while Mukoda begins washing his clothes. Unhappy with the local soap, Mukoda decides to buy some better soap from his online grocery and plans to sell some to Lambert. He transfers the conditioner and shampoo into different containers to avoid suspicion. Meanwhile, Sui is playing in a bucket of water, and Mukoda wishes he could also take a bath as he hadn't had one in a long time. Later, he meets Lambert to sell the serpent skin. Lambert was pleased with the quality and pays Mukoda 50 gold coins. Mukoda also shows him the soap, shampoo, and conditioner, explaining their benefits. Lambert is initially silent, but then thanks Mukoda for being in touch. He's struggling to find a suitable anniversary gift for his wife, who didn't want bags or accessories, so the items Mukoda brought are perfect because his wife loved taking baths. Lambert proudly shows Mukoda their bathtub, explaining it was a luxury item costing around 100 gold coins along with a magic tool to heat and purify the water. Lambert notices Mukoda's interest and offers to introduce him to a shop that sells bathtubs. Before he leaves, Lambert takes a sample of each toiletry item. The next day, Lambert's wife greets Mukoda first and praises the items. She notices how refreshed Lambert looks after his bath and is eager to try the items herself. Lambert, surprised by her reaction, hopes to surprise her for their anniversary, but she says she eats items right away and is very satisfied. Lambert praises his wife's beauty, and Mukoda feels annoyed watching them flirt. Lambert then discusses the items with Mukoda and offered to let him sell them in his shop. Although Lambert is initially hesitant since his shop sold leather, his wife sees the potential in the items and insisted that no other merchant should sell them. Mukoda agrees to sell exclusively through their store, and she requests to finalize the details immediately. However, she inadvertently revealed that she wants to make sure she could get the items for herself. Exhausted from the transaction, Mukoda returns to the inn after spending the whole day filling bottles with shampoo and conditioner. Fel asks Mukoda's plans for the day, suggesting they visit a dungeon, but Mukoda declines and says they need to meet Willem at the guild. Fel reluctantly agrees, and at the guild, Mukoda overhears other adventurers talking about wyverns. When he enters Willem's office, he's shocked to see stacks of gold coins, and Willem explains that the city lord is very grateful for the Mithril mine discovery. Mukoda says he's been busy with buying a bathtub before a guild employee suddenly bursts in with news of a wyvern swarm attacking a low-rank adventurer party in the plains. The party, though they managed to escape, was heavily injured and poisoned. Willem, having run out of potions, is relieved when Mukata gives him some high-quality potions, and the potions quickly heal the adventurer's wounds and remove the poison, leaving Willem and others surprised. Willem then announces an emergency quest, calling all C-rank adventurers and above to join the hunt for the Wyverns to protect the city. Although initially frightened, the adventurers are motivated by Willem's speech about their pride as adventurers. Fel, however, declares that he would handle the Wyverns himself, surprising everyone. Mukata tries to stop him, but Fel argues it would be good exercise and that Wyvern meat was delicious. Fel also asks if he can keep the Wyverns he hunted, and Willem agrees, offering to bring the adventurers along. Fel declines, stating they would be in his way and that the city's safety could be left to him alone. Reluctantly, Mukata joins Fel as they go to confront the Wyverns, and despite recognizing the danger, Fel is annoyed by the flying Wyverns. Curious, Sui says he's eager to learn how to hunt flying creatures, and even though Mukata was concerned, Fel sees it as a good chance to teach Sui, who is excited about the opportunity. Fel orders Sui to aim at the Wyvern's heads or wings, so Sui tries but misses the head, hitting a wing instead and causing a Wyvern to fall. Fel finishes off the fallen Wyvern with his magic and reminds Sui to avoid damaging the bodies as they plan to eat them. While explosions go off around them, Mukata hurriedly hides behind a boulder, feeling troubled by how Sui is becoming more like Fel. A Wyvern sneaks up on Mukata and attacks, but Fel's barrier protects him. Sui blocks the Wyvern's next attack before Fel defeats it. Exhausted from the battle, Mukata prepared food using the patties he had made earlier, and Fel asks if they would be having hamburgers again, but Mukata decides to bread and deep fry the patties this time. Meanwhile, everyone in the guild is nervously waiting for news about the Wyvern hunt.
I'm waiting!
At the guild, everyone is anxious because Mukata's group hasn't returned yet. When Mukata finally arrives, Willem, looking worried, asks about their hunt, so Mukata asks Fel to explain. Fel tells the group that they managed to hunt every Wyvern in the area, hearing which the adventurers and knights start celebrating, surprising Mukata. Willem explains that even if all the city's adventurers had worked together, they would have only managed to hunt half of the Wyverns and still face a large number of casualties. The adventurers had been very worried about the hunt, so Mukata decides to not reveal that they had dealt with the Wyverns easily and had mostly been camping and eating. However, Fel inadvertently revealed that they easily killed all the Wyverns, and Sui praises their meals as if they didn't care about the hunt. Mukata then stays in Willem's office and explains they had collected 13 Wyvern corpses, intact except for their heads. They agree that the guild would butcher the Wyverns for free, while Mukata would keep all the meat. However, the guild can only afford materials for half of the Wyverns. Later, Mukata returns to the inn preoccupied with the Wyvern issue and forgets about the offerings for the goddesses. While Mukata is preparing the offerings and talking to Agni, the other 3 goddesses message him privately, each requesting the offerings they like. Agni is furious to learn about this but asks for booze, so Mukata starts feeling helpless as he listens to the goddesses argue. As Mukata walks through the city, he notices that he and his group have become famous for hunting the Wyverns. He stops by a bathtub shop recommended by Lambert, and the shopkeeper shows him several bathtubs, each better than the last, but Mukata chooses the simple. The shopkeeper thinks he's just an ordinary customer until Mukata pays upfront and uses an item box, leading the shop employees to bow respectfully as Mukata happily leaves with his new bathtub. He decides to leave the town immediately to avoid the citizens' attention, and once they reach the forest, Fel sets a barrier around Mukata before heading out to hunt. Mukata sets up 4 stone walls, places the bathtub in the center, and asks Sui to fill it with water. He uses his fireball to heat the water and makes sure to wash himself thoroughly before getting into the tub. Sui joins him, curious about the pleasant smell of the bath salts, and after their bath, they both enjoy a bottle of milk. Sui quickly grows to love baths as much as Mukata, and they wish Fel could have joined them. Mukata then prepares a meal with the Wyvern meat and has high hopes for it since Fel had praised it. He slices onions and Wyvern meat, then adds soy sauce, sugar, and sake to boiling water with ginger paste, meat, and onions. He serves the meat and soup over rice, but is surprised that Fel still hasn't returned, so he decides to prepare another dish. He cuts vegetables and meat into large chunks, seasons the meat, and sautés it until brown before adding the vegetables. He then adds wine, water, consommé, demi-glace sauce, and a little ketchup, letting it simmer. As Sui sees Fel returning, he's shocked to see a large lizard, which turned out to be an earth dragon corpse carried by Fel. Fel explains that he wasn't satisfied with just hunting wyverns, so he also hunted the dragon. Mukata is alarmed to find out it was a dragon, but Fel is mainly interested in its taste. Mukata complains about accumulating high-rank monster corpses that were hard to sell, but Fel is worried about whether the guild could butcher the dragon. Fel gets drawn to the aroma of Mukauda's dishes, which Mukauda explains are made from wyvern meat. Fel is eager to eat, but is told he can't until he's cleaned up. Covered in dirt from the dragon fight, Fel argues that he is clean, but eventually agrees to bathe. Mukauda uses grooming products on Fel, who is initially resistant but eventually likes the bath. Sui helps by making a water hose, making it easier to wash Fel. And although Fel is reluctant at first, he enjoys the bath once Mukauda uses soap on him. After drying Fel with warm wind magic, Mukauda praises him as a handsome dog, resembling the legendary Fenrir, though Fel denies it. Next, Mukauda heats the rice and serves it with the stew. Fel is initially skeptical about the rice-to-meat ratio, but is impressed once he tries it, praising both dishes.
Very impressive.
Mukauda is surprised that the wyvern meat is similar to high-quality beef. Both Sui and Fel ask for second servings, and Mukauda explains that the other dish would be better the next day. After their meal, they return to the guild to sell the Earth Dragon's corpse, but the guild doesn't have the funds. Johan admits he isn't skilled enough to butcher the dragon, which is considered a valuable material. Willem directs Mukauda to Dallin, where a knowledgeable guild master might help. Fel is excited since Dallin is on their way to the sea, where he wants to hunt sea serpents and krakens. Willem and Johan laugh their plan, and Mukauda visited the people he had gotten to know to inform them of him leaving. He collects the map and introduction letter from Willem. Leaving the city, Mukauda plans to first meet Dallin's guild master to get the Earth Dragon butchered and then hunt krakens and sea serpents. At dinner, Fel enjoys the previous day's stew, and he and Sui remark that they can't wait to see what he cooks, next seeing which he happily remarks that they've turned into complete foodies.